Hey, Semi, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
Thanks, sir.
Hey, everybody out there. My name's Rob Linebarger. I'm with the Spokane County Republican Party, and I'm here to interview our candidate for governor who's endorsed by the Washington State Republican Party and the County of Spokane, as well as, what is it now, 24 other counties and various legislative districts. What's the count on that?
I think it's 24, and we just picked up another legislative district yesterday in King County.
King County.
Yes.
That's amazing.
We're doing well.
We're going to talk a little bit about that, how amazing that is, and the
you.
great work you're doing. So just for the folks out there, a little bit about myself. I'm a retired Navy officer. I had a full spectrum career, I'll call it. I started out as an enlisted man. I enlisted out of high school in 1984. I reported for active duty in 1985. Back then, we had the delayed entry program, so you signed up, in the hallway at school, and then, they waited to see if you actually graduated, and then you moved on and you got your life ahead of you, right? So, best decision I ever made. And so I went through, the first 4 years of my enlisted career. I made 2 deployments on the Nimitz, on an aircraft carrier. I was an aviation electrician's mate, worked on EA 6B Prowler jets, stationed at Whidbey Island. And I submitted an application for the enlisted commissioning program, and I was accepted. And I went to Oregon State, went through Navy ROTC there, and was commissioned an ensign in 1993. Went to Pensacola for flight training after that. I was a helicopter pilot, and I, ultimately made the rank of lieutenant commander. I commanded 2 overseas detachments for Operation Iraqi Freedom, and also did some other ops. When you're not over there for 9 months, they grab you for 2 or 3 or 90 days. So
Yes, they do.
did a lot of good stuff. Probably have the shared experience. Met some great people who some of them I'm still in touch with today, and so. Why am I telling everybody that? Because there's some current news that's come out, from the press and the media about, your service.
Yes.
And the questions that they have about your service. And so I just want to tell everybody, I have firsthand experience both on the receiving end and the delivery end of what we're going to talk about, and what Semi's been not necessarily accused. I want to say the event that happened. You're not accused of anything in my book, because it's a factual matter that I think has been taken out of context.
I would agree with that.
Okay, and what I would like to straighten out, and the goal of this interview is for the folks out there that didn't live the life, right? Particularly that the ones that didn't have to get involved in the administrative part of it, which is when you ascend in rank. That's the terrible part. I'd rather be out like shooting with the guys and flying the missions every day than sitting in the office, looking through service records, right? But we have to do it. It goes with the job. So I understand how the process works. And when I first saw, the report by Jason Rantz that came out the day after Memorial Day, which I believe was the 28th of May, okay, I looked at that right away, and I knew that it was complete garbage. Okay, and just because from a procedural point of view, what he was reporting is impossible unless somebody either did something nefarious or flat out broke the law. And I think maybe there's a little bit of both. Okay, so I'd like to have a conversation about that, and then some other things, and basically how we go on offense now and move forward, because your supporters love you. We won't abandon you, I guarantee that, and we're going to work hard and win this race, because we can't turn this state around, or even our country around, unless we start making some real changes. And you've been doing the work that we want you to do. So without further ado. Okay, so to start out, I'd just like to basically do an intro and talk about the journey of what you're going through. You didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to go out and start knocking doors.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there was a thought process behind it. It's a family decision. And so how did that happen to between you and Ann, your wife, and your family? How did you come to the point where hey, I'm gonna put myself into this meat grinder?
For me, the best way I can explain it, it's a calling for me. It's a need. It's a call to service. But it's a call to serve something so much greater than myself. And it's not just spiritually, but our nation. When you sit back and you see what's happening to our country, what's happening to our state, where our constitutional rights are being taken away from us every day, where you can weaponize government. And then the court of public opinion dominates, and then reputation's ruined, or careers lost, or you can create a mandate and take away a person's business, or tell a person you must do this, or I'll take away your career and you'll lose your job. All these things were happening. You're shutting down schools, you're shutting down businesses, you're shutting down our economy, you're harming children, you're taking away their innocence. All these things have been happening. And so I started to look into this. even deeper. And I just felt it. And I knew it was the right thing to do. And of course, I go to my chain of command and seek my endorsement through her. Honey, what are your thoughts? And she said right off the bat, she goes, we're going to be in this bubble. People are going to be coming after us and coming after you. And it wasn't because we looked back and said, oh, Simeon has this nefarious life or anything. It's just how politics can be dirty and ugly. But I've served over 20-something years in the military. I was prepared to give my life in service to my nation. And so when you fight and are willing to die for your country on foreign soil, what does that say about you're willing to serve on American soil, in your own community, in the state in which you were raised in? In my case, I was raised in Washington State. It's been my home for 57 years. This is where I'll die. So I'm vested here. And now it's time to fight. We the people. I'm just an everyday citizen who believes in our Constitution, who believes in goodness in each other, and I have faith that together we're going to do this. And so that's the journey. And everything else, just follow the light, do what you know to be right, and take it to the people. And we've been campaigning for almost 2 years and going to the people, big towns, small towns, inner city, rural. Everyone has worth and value. And so go to them, talk to them, listen to them, make sure that you're communicating your message, but also learning what's important to them. And then give them solutions. Tell them what you're about, what you're going to do. Don't sell fear. Bring hope, because that's what we need in Washington State. So there's my journey.
It's outstanding. And you jumped ahead of me a little bit, but I won't hold it against you. So I got it. And I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit here, because there's some specific things that I want to make sure I cover for the audience's purposes. But so I would just like to know, like, for your campaign, what is your vision for the campaign? And when you are our governor, what is your vision for the state?
My goodness. Well, the campaign is simply to get out, engage, as I said earlier, make sure that we're touching and engaging as many communities as we can, because this is a servant leadership position, not just simply a leadership position. This is a call to serve. The customer is the people. The client is the people. Elected officials are there to serve. Plain and simple. Powers is vested, right? Power's inherent in the people. They vest that power in elected officials. So the campaign is strong in getting out and engaging. But as governor, it's to go to work. We have a very inefficient government in Washington State. This administration has doubled the budget in the last 10 years, $71.5 billion. Homelessness is increasing to 23%, and we've spent billions of dollars. We've been paying gas tax for better roads and bridges for decades. And look at the roads and bridges, and they're asking for another $1 billion. We have a marijuana tax, a liquor tax, a gambling tax. Where's the money going? No one knows, and no one can pinpoint it.
Well, didn't they just lose $1 billion somewhere and they can't find it, or is it more?
And again, employment security.
Right.
Lost hundreds of millions of dollars. I can go on and on. So I'm a performance consultant, a behavioral scientist. My specialty is going into organizations and help them to become better performing organizations, better efficient organizations. I help with strategy, planning, and execution of those plans, as you alluded to earlier. So I'm simply applying for a job. We the people, you the people, are my clients, my customers, and those who I serve. I work for you. And so I'm going to work to fix our government and to serve the people, to ensure that we honor the Constitution and we honor what America stands for. E pluribus unum, out of the many one. We may be many colors and many people and many religions, but together as Americans, we are one America. We should be one Washington, united toward a better Washington. And I'd like to represent that. I'd be honored to bring change to represent that.
Okay, so some feedback on that, because so what I'm hearing is one of the deplorables. Okay, is that in Article 1 of our state constitution, like you said, the power is derived from the people. So you're going there with that in mind, and not that, hey, I just want to make sure that my big donors get contracts with that $71.5 billion you were talking about. Which, I mean, honestly, in politics, is that a motivator for a candidate to make sure that, their donors are taken care of once they're in office? Is that why they maybe do some of the behaviors they do, so they make sure that they can follow through on that implied contract?
Yeah, so let me, I'll speak candidly and I'll
Yeah.
speak accurately. That was put out in an open letter by one of the largest so-called conservative, but it's a mainstream organization that said the big money donors have spoken and they are supporting another candidate, Dave Raker. And so step aside, save your reputation, and demonstrate that you're a good Republican team player. Run for lieutenant governor. And when I said no, well, then the attacks came out. It is obvious that when you were bringing in millions of dollars right off the bat, that is not how a constitutional republic works. If power is inherent in the people, and government derives their just powers from the consent of the governed, and government's job is to protect and maintain the individual rights of citizens, then it is citizens who should be funding citizens who should have a voice in who their candidates are. Not special interest groups, not a oligarchy, political patriarchs or aristocrats who make and choose the candidates. It should be the people. But it has been the opposite for so long. And when you dare to stand in the way of how it's been, well, then that big money and that power can be turned against you. And I'm feeling it as people are seeing. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, so Jason Rantz releases a story regarding an incident that happened during your career that resulted in a non-punitive event for punishment, or we can call it, I would call it counseling. That's the way I viewed it more.
Yeah.
I wasn't there to punish the person. I was there to have a conversation with the few individuals, and fortunately I didn't have to do it a whole lot. You don't want to even do it once when you're on the sending end, and you definitely don't want to be standing tall on the receiving end of that. It's a humbling experience, okay, regardless. And let me ask you this, it was humbling, it could, because I received a non-punitive letter for something that was misinterpreted that I did, unrelated to service. It was actually in the community. I was volunteering with a group of kids and playing flag football with them, and one of them ran into me and fell down, and the mother complained to the command that I basically put a block on the kid. Right?
Yeah.
So, and Captain Barton was the gentleman's name. He was the CO of VX1 when I was there, and when I was an operational test pilot at VX1. And he's like, okay, I'm going to give you this non-punitive letter. Make sure next time you're out there playing with the kids, if one of them runs into you, make sure you don't hurt them. And I'm like, okay. And the way that it worked in the Navy was Captain Barton put that non-punitive letter in his drawer, and when he had his change of command, that thing went in the shredder. And I believe that's the same way it's supposed to work in the Army. Is that true?
Well, it is. And in this case, we're talking about a reprimand. And the reprimand in question was restricted. And that's the equivalent. And so you have an Army Regulation 600-37 and Chapter 7, which says the only way for a reprimand to be restricted if you have presented evidence to show that it is untrue or unfair in whole or in part. And in my case, there was an allegation of a couple of things. One was about awards and or badges, and then the other thing was a warrant officer application. And we presented after the general wrote a reprimand based on those allegations. He gave me 7 days to write my rebuttal and to present evidence to show, well, my side of the story. And after hearing that, he said, okay. And he restricted the reprimand, which said that no one could ever see that unless you had very high level access to those records. And so no one ever saw it. And I finished my career with numerous commendations, a meritorious service medal, maintained my top secret SCI clearance, a good conduct medal with a top secret SCI clearance, and retired. But somehow, Jason Rantz finds himself in possession of this reprimand. The only way you can get that reprimand, you cannot FOIA a reprimand. You have to steal it. It was obtained illegally. And there are Army laws and federal laws. This falls under the Federal Protection Act of 1974, the Military Records Protection Act. And it also says anybody in possession of those records or illegal dissemination of those records. And so hopefully we'll talk about that. But the reprimand, if we have time, I'd like to talk about that.
We have time right now.
The reprimand. Let's talk about medals and badges or awards. The Washington State Republican Party was provided with proof, documentation, military documentation for anything and everything that I've ever worn at any time in my career. All the allegations that Jason Morantz brought forward of anything regarding that was provided to the Washington State Republican Party. They verified all of my training, combat diver, everything. But I read their response on behalf of the candidate committee, the same committee that tried to disqualify me at the convention and failed. He chose to allow it to happen again, to investigate me based on a media story, based on a stolen document and a violation of privacy, a crime.
Yes.
I presented all the proof. But let's stop and think about this. I'm a combat veteran. I was decorated with our nation's highest awards, the Bronze Star Valor, the Purple Heart. I should have died that night, but I didn't. And now, 18 years later, Jason Morantz and others in support of this lie is trying to kill my legacy to my children, the memory of their father and his service to our nation, for administrative nuances or nitpicking of badges. Or they verified my medals of valor. They verified that. But I didn't read that in that press release. I didn't read the fact that their National Archives search of training found that I did my combat diver training. I didn't read that they verified I was awarded the diver MOS because the Army, when I enlisted...
Hold on, explain MOS. It's
military occupational specialty.
Right.
And so they will take, when you enlist into another branch, they review all of your training, they review all of your awards, and they transfer over from one branch to another any military occupational specialty or training that you have that they can use, that can be beneficial for your new branch. And they awarded me the military occupational specialty of diver, of infantryman, and of communications. And they did it officially on official documents to which we have, and we provide it to the state party. That is just official, it's fact. And we have all the other documents that support that. And the state party received that, and they themselves, through National Archives, verified all of this. But yet on their statement, it mentioned nothing that they verified all of those things. German jump wings, to which they verified on the DD-214 that we provided to them. Every other badge that they accused me of wearing, scuba diver badge, verified. But they didn't mention that. But what they did do was they disseminated a stolen document across the entire state. This is the Washington State Republican Party.
Who, by the way, you are endorsed by the state Republican Party.
Well, that's what I was under the impression of, and many other delegates, I believe 1,839, who showed up to the convention.
Right.
And on April 20th cast their vote. 72% of them said that they wanted to endorse me. And that was the understanding.
Were they just basically whispering that they wanted to endorse
no.
you, or was it a
They were very
full-throated
loud and
endorsement?
very proud to
Okay.
endorse their candidate.
Yeah.
And others may have called that chaos. We call that passionate excitement.
Yeah.
For, well...
I call it inspiration.
It was a beautiful day.
Right.
But I guess in truth, and back to the reprimand. So we talked about awards and medals and badges. So understand this, and this is for everyone out there. I've had all that documentation. That documentation was presented to the general. So he had it, which is why that was never part of his final determination. But why he determined to restrict the file, because in the 7 days, we presented all those documentation so that he could see. Everything was legitimate. and there was no nefarious wearing of medals or badges or any nefarious intent. Let's talk about the warrant officer packet. Applying for a warrant officer position was the idea of my command. Supported by my command, majors, lieutenant colonels, and colonels.
Right.
These are senior officers in my chain of command. Not only did they initiate it, but they supported it. I was missing rated time. What that means is simply this. People who work, they get an annual performance review.
Yes.
In the military, we call that non-commissioned officer evaluation reports.
Correct.
And CERs. When you transfer from one unit to another, often you leave and you don't stop to get that last report.
There's a category for that called leave in transit.
There you go.
Right.
And much is the case, and it happens all the time.
Yes.
Similar and a little bit different in this case. The requirement for a warrant officer program in Special Forces is to have 3 years of Special Forces team time. I had 1 year of Special Forces team time in combat. My other 2 years was in intelligence and operations and psychological operations. Close, but not quite accurate team time. And so my command facilitated the creation of evaluation reports to make up for that lost time and ensured that we could facilitate that. That became an issue of this reprimand. That was the majority. That was the whole reason for the reprimand, was the inaccuracies of that non-rated time.
So let me ask you this on that point, right? So I know in the process in the Navy, okay, so we have an administrative officer, right? And that person has a staff. And then they do that, they check your service record and they look at the sequencing of time and,
Yes.
like for officers, we have fit reps, and like you said, enlisted folks have evaluations, and you go from, the day of the previous evaluation, the day it started to the day it ended, and they need to be sequential, except if there's leave in transit or some other circumstance, but there is a record of that, right?
Yes.
So then those people put the packet together, and then it goes through the chain of command. And the chain of command includes the executive officer and the commanding officer of the squadron that must sign off on that package, we call it, okay? And then you are called into the CO's office, who has already signed it, likely, because I normally had, and then you sign it.
That is correct.
Okay, is that what happened?
That's exactly what happened. So the evaluations, the NCERs, were created, and everybody had input on the NCERs. And in fact, in this case, as what happens with any other civilian, where you'll have supervisors start writing up your bullet points, that's going to go on your...
Call it a brag sheet.
Yep, your brag sheet.
Right.
Send that information to me, and we'll finalize it. We'll go back and forth to make sure we have what we want to have. And then those senior officers, they sign their name once they feel that that report is accurate to their satisfaction. And I am the last person to sign.
Right.
They created the final evaluations. I was the last person to sign. And that is what happened. And that is where the issue was. I didn't forge any evaluations. I did not fraud any evaluations. All of that was done. And I actually have the email from one of the signatories on those evaluations sent to me, who supported the whole idea of the application. Yeah. I have the letters of recommendation from colonels, lieutenant colonels, my chain of command, all of that information. But back then, I took full responsibility. And I met with the general, and the general told me, "You think you're being noble by not mentioning who was really behind all this. I already know." They came to my office and told me it was their idea, that they were the ones who helped put all of this together. He said, "You are a senior non-commissioned officer, and I want you to be able to, in the future, stand up and tell them, no matter how high up rank they are, no, or a general like me, no. Take the difficult right over the easy wrong." He said, "Go back and write your rebuttal, give me all of your information, and prove to me that you understand how serious this is, that this is essentially cheating. It is a fraud because you are, in fact, denying someone who meets all the requirements. You are trying to make that square peg fit in a round hole, which is not the way it's intended to work according to Army regulation, even though everyone else does this."
Right.
In this case, it has been exposed, and I must act and ensure that you understand what should be done and what should have been done. And that's when I went back and I wrote my rebuttal. And I said that this reprimand response was about the warrant officer packet. It had nothing to do with awards or badges, but about that. And they take full responsibility without naming names. And to this day, I will not name names. I will provide all that documentation if need be, but I will block out those names. Or maybe leave a first name or part of a name so everyone will see the signatures partially and the names partially, but their title. And you'll see Chief Warrant Officer 5s. You'll see colonels, commanding officers of my unit, executive officers, leaders of operations, lieutenant colonels. I even had a colonel, my former commander, write a character reference to talk about this. I had a lieutenant colonel who told him this was blown way out of proportion. There is no fraud. And then today, and it started last night, one of the investigative officers from that time who brought forth the information and results of the investigation said, I will write a statement, Semi. I know the truth. I know you did not fraud. You did not forge any documents. And they were the ones who were behind it. You went along with it. And the general's point was for you to say no. So truth is on my side. And we will continue to bring truth through our written document and supporting exhibits to show everyone. But I will not compromise the lives of others to do it. That's how it is. When it comes to combat operations, when it comes to service, we are raised in service to understand that you are the last variable. Mission, men, self. That is the order of priority. That is how we are raised in the military. You are the last factor. You are the one that matters less in everything. It is your men and the mission that must come first, not you.
Absolutely.
And so for me to, as others would say, fall on the sword or to take accountability and responsibility, that's not a second thought for me. And as you said, and you were right, this was a counseling. The general himself, in an email just from a few weeks ago, said this was never intended to be put out to the public. It's like being a therapist and someone breaks into the office of your therapist and puts those documents out. Never meant to be put out there. And now they're trying to paint me as a fraud. But just remember, this started off with them saying, I stole Valor.
Exactly.
That is the worst thing that you can do to someone who is willing to die for their country, to accuse them of that, and then to have their own political party glance right over that, not even mention the word valor, not even mention the fact that they received all of the paperwork and official documentation to exonerate me of any inappropriate wearing of any badge. They have the truth, and they refuse to tell the truth to the public, but they did not hesitate to release a stolen document which compromises my right to privacy under federal law. That concerns me. I am not out to attack anyone. I am out to represent everyone, and it has to start with our constitutional rights.
Yeah, so there was an accusation that I read that you weren't fully transparent on this, and you probably didn't think it was an issue because, like we talked about, it was a counseling, and I know, like, in my experience is there was a period of time, and if you repeated the offense during that period of time, well, then it became more serious. It could be a punitive reprimand, right? Was there a period of time, and then once you were beyond that, it's General Pagan, right? And, he was satisfied that, you got the message, and let's move forward, right?
Yeah, so here's the period of time immediately.
Okay.
It was immediately. So the general knew the truth.
Okay.
And that's what people won't understand, because you read this, and you read a reprimand that was written based on allegations, awards and badges, but specifically, he was talking about the warrant officer packet.
Could you have asked for an Article 32 when they accused you?
Could I have?
Yes.
Oh, 100%. I could have requested trial by court-martial.
Right, exactly. And for people who don't know, an Article 32 is basically a grand jury hearing in the military.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I could have requested that.
Yeah.
But the general wrote in his reprimand, which people are glancing past and appear to not either understand or care.
Yeah.
He said, he's imposing a administrative measure,
Right.
not punishment under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. What that says is, this is administrative counseling, as you put it,
Right.
and not punishment. But it became effective immediately, and he restricted it immediately because he was provided, after he wrote it, where he was saying fraud and cheat, essentially you
Yes.
cheated to get, sounded very strong, but that was based off the original allegations.
Mm-hmm.
But once he received testimony from those officers and written, documented proof through official military documents that exonerated me, and then he learned this was not my idea, and that those evaluations were written and signed off by senior officers, he just wanted me to learn that lesson. And then it was restricted, lesson learned, and put into my folder. Again, that's what people need to understand, but that was not the intent of this article. It was to take combat action from 2006, a reprimand from 2009, put it all together and tell a story that would say that I stole valor, like I put on fake medals and went out to get a free cup of coffee.
Right. You cut yourself shaving in the field.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I got my feelings hurt by staying in the barracks.
Right.
No, what a great dishonor to someone who's willing to die for their nation. But then a reprimand, that the truth behind, you see these strong words, but you don't understand. Why would I see these strong words? And you don't know that no one was supposed to see those strong words, because it was not for the public, and it was written based on the original allegations,
Yeah.
which was very nefarious. But when you have the truth, you go, oh, now I know the truth. Lesson is learned. We restrict it because now I know the truth. And that was the evidence that was produced to say, now I have the lawful, under Army Regulations 600-37, Chapter 7, to put this in a restricted file. And then someone stole that document, violated my federal right to privacy. So I hope I answered that question. But
Yeah. And just one more. So,
Yeah.
Were you subsequently promoted after that event?
yeah, I was advanced. And so I was
Yeah.
advanced to serving in field grade officer positions. And what that
Okay.
means to civilians, I'm an E7, a sergeant first class,
Right.
but I was put in positions of lieutenant colonels and majors.
Okay. In positions of responsibility above your rank.
Yes.
Okay.
And during that time, within 30 days of the reprimand, in Special Operations Command South, the earthquake in Haiti, the 7.0
Yeah.
magnitude earthquake, lives lost, buildings devastated, I was deployed and I was chosen by the command of Special Operations Command South to serve as the Special Operations Liaison to General Keane, the commander of Operation Unified Response,
Yeah, I remember
and the
him.
response to Haiti.
Yes.
That was my job. So right immediately after that reprimand, I was called to represent our command as their Special Operations Liaison to that very important mission. And I deployed forward into Haiti, and I went up back and forth to Miami, where the headquarters of Southern Command was. And I also reported to the Joint Chiefs and Secretaries of State. So I
Any
was
chance
interested
that
in
happens if you're a dirtbag solder and you have
fraud.
a black mark and a fraud?
Yeah, a
record?
fraud.
Any chance of that happening?
Yeah, no, not at all.
None.
And the reality, and I wish people would just read,
Yeah.
you read these very damning words. Why would you not expect punishment? Why would I not be punished? If that was the case, you would not restrict a document to protect me. You would enforce or impose punishment
Yes.
on me.
You were not punished.
I was not punished. It was the opposite. They restricted the document to protect me, and someone stole the document from a restricted file and put it out in violation of my privacy,
Right.
committing a crime. And then recently, and I'm looking forward to, and by the way, this is under investigation by the Army Office of Inspector General. It started with the United States Department of Defense, Office of Inspector General, and then they notified me that they handed it over to the Department of Army because this is an internal breach, and that's how they're treating it. But again, now we have a state party that has released this document out to the entire state. And I'm looking forward to hearing what the Office of Inspector General
Yeah.
has to say about that, because as I read federal law, I don't think that's authorized.
Probably not, and that's why that Privacy Act statement's on that folder.
100%.
So I'd like to go in, based on what you just said, let's go into the why
Yeah.
this happened a little bit. And I have a theory, okay, which I think is backed up by data, okay, and observed behavior,
As it should be.
right? So just to refresh everybody, you were a Green Beret,
Yes.
right? You weren't a faux Green Beret who just served with them and wore the Green Beret. You were actually one.
Yeah, after 9/11, I volunteered I applied
Yes.
for the Special Operations Regiment, the Special Forces Regiment.
At what age?
43 years of
Okay.
age is when I was awarded the Green Beret. I received my language training in Chinese Mandarin and immediately deployed to the Middle East to fight in combat in Iraq. And I was assigned as a Special Forces advisor to a tactical psychological operations team. I had advanced in my skill set as an advanced special operations technician, and intelligence and psychological operations was my specialty. Sensitive site exploitation, which is the equivalent to CSI, and I served.
Okay. Funny you should mention psychological operations. So would you consider yourself an expert in procedural, like in the procedures and the expected outcome of psychological operations? And when they're unleashed, whether it's on a small group of people or the public en masse, like let's say COVID, you understand how the game works.
Well, I did it.
Yes.
Strategically, operationally, I taught it. I taught it internationally, and I am considered a subject matter expert in intelligence operations and psychological
Have you
operations.
ever consulted outside of the military on that?
I have. I've
Tell me about
consulted
that.
federal agencies. I've consulted countries. I've taught it internationally. I've taught foreign officers, foreign intelligence agencies, intelligence, psychological operations, and tradecraft regarding to intelligence. So I'll stop there and
Okay.
reference
So
the
I have
intelligence.
not, but I am a graduate of the Naval War College,
Yes.
and we talk about this stuff, or we have a class in there.
Yes.
One of the things we like when you go there, you learn all the way from like campaign planning, which would be like Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander type stuff.
Yes.
And the reasons why you do it, and the decision points that have to be made when
Yes.
you're talking about moving fleets instead of moving a squad.
Yes.
You kind of get into the weeds on this stuff, right?
If I can, Rob. So
Please,
I've
yeah.
served many times Operation Cobra Gold,
Yeah.
which some and many are familiar. I've served as the Special Operations Liaison, another field grade officer position, to the Fleet Commander. So I was Special Operations Representative to the Commander of the Naval Fleet of the Pacific on numerous occasions.
Which is a job that would be above your pay grade.
It would be a very, very senior officer position.
Yeah.
And I've done it many times. My command sergeant major, who also responded with his letter stating, written and he signed, that I was exonerated regarding any allegations of fraud on this reprimand lie that others are trying to tell. And that strong word. That was my command sergeant major. And recently, many have not seen and they will see, is my colonel, my last colonel, commander of my unit, who verified the aforementioned. And so I've deployed with my command sergeant major. He's seen with his own eyes, and in other support letters, he has stated my capabilities and how I have served. So I understand what you're saying. Your training in War College, whether it's in initial preparation of the battlefield or in IPE and IP, I've done
Mine
that.
was theoretical.
Yes.
Yours was operational.
Absolutely.
Right? But you knew the process as well, right?
Yes.
So they put out a fake narrative, which is what this was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I would even go beyond that. I would say it's an engineered fake narrative. Okay?
Yes.
It wasn't just a mistake.
No, of course not.
Okay? It was coordinated.
Of course.
Okay? And for the sole purpose of somebody's first impression. And once that first impression is in their mind, it's nearly impossible, and we've done these studies, to correct that.
Yeah.
You have to have, like we're doing right now, face-to-face 7 to 10 times with that person with some type of proof before they change their mind. So in this case, you're guilty till proven innocent in the press, okay? And what I think, you want to talk about maybe some stolen valor or just some dishonest behavior, the people that should have had your back that didn't, that allowed this to happen, that's something that we should really have a conversation about sometime, right?
If I can speak to the distorted perception concept in theory,
Yeah.
just essentially, and I'll
And hold on,
type.
did you know I was going to ask you this, just for the record?
No.
So he's doing this, from memory.
Oh yeah. Well,
guy's
no.
sharp.
I taught it, and
Yeah,
so
right.
But and we did it, and so
Yeah.
what you're saying. So I'll tie directly to this incident you speak of. Jason Rance contacted me. I believe it was on a Friday. I thought he was contacting me to have a discussion on my military experience, to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their country, to pay honor to those
Right.
veterans who died to protect
Yeah.
our rights to freedom, our freedom. And instead, he did not. It was about this, on something that happened years ago in 2009. This is 2024. That was restricted. So it must be about something else, because it couldn't be about that on a Friday before Memorial Day. So right after that call, because I have not looked at that reprimand since the day it was done.
And why would you?
Why would I? It had disappeared. I didn't even
Right.
think to have it permanently.
Did you have any type of guilt or remorse that you carried with you for the rest of your life
No.
over that happening?
No, lesson
Right.
learned. No, the lesson was learned. But the point to be made is simply this: why would I discuss anything or disclose anything regarding this? Because it was already found to be untrue or
Yeah.
unjust.
So my
which is-
point is, you didn't wake up every day after it happened and say, "Okay, it's been
Of course not.
5,700 days since my reprimand. I'm okay with
No,
it."
of course
Right.
not. But back to the
Exactly.
point. He called, brought this up. My wife is in the office listening to this, crying. That bothered me. I immediately called the Judge Advocate General, Fort Lewis, immediately. This is Friday before the Memorial Day holiday. When I finally got a hold of them, they said, "Sir, we're closing, and we won't open until Tuesday." That probably wasn't an accident. And then
Probably
the
not.
article was released before they opened up. And when they opened up, I spoke to the individual who handles all FOIA requests.
Right.
He says, there is no FOIA taken out under your name. And even if it was, which it was not, they could not FOIA that document. You cannot release that document legally. So that was not by accident. So they can put out this message, distorted, talking about combat from anonymous Green Berets. At my vehicle position, there's 2 Green Berets. The major who put me in for that Medal of Valor, and myself. Those are the only 2 Green Berets in my vehicle at my vehicle position. And we're positioned not like this, not like circle your wagons of the 1800s. We are separated out tactically
Right.
and operationally.
There's intervals that have to be maintained.
Exactly. And so
Exactly.
no one could see what happened at my position.
Right.
Except
But
that
somebody
other,
said that they did, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the only person who was a Green Beret who saw it was the one who put me in for an award. Here's what other people don't understand. That major, I was not in his unit. I did not know him. He was an observer from Special Forces Operations Baghdad, who was there to observe our unique operation and mission set of tactical psychological operations. So this is the distorted perception. If perception is reality,
Yes.
you distort that reality, and then you take that incident and you bring anonymous testimonial,
That's right.
and then you lump it with the reprimand, and then you show the reprimand with these damning words with no background to it whatsoever. And then later, as we're seeing, you bring other things, and then you start focusing in on administrative minutia of military service records,
Right.
things that no one knows anything about. They don't even know the acronyms. But the perception of fraud, the perception
Right.
of stolen valor, and then they have a candidate committee try to take what others would know as stolen valor, medals of valor, and then they say, no, it's more than that. It is a badge or a star on a medal or oak leaf cluster.
Right.
And they start to combine
Right.
distorted perception.
Exactly.
And they change the reality.
That's right. And what
of the
they do as
public.
well, and you'll know these, right? So, and again, I I probably indirectly participated in this stuff, but I never planned them, so I wasn't on the strategic side of it. But there are these terms that go with it, and one is they, like you said, they overgeneralize things
Yes.
for one, and and this is a kind of a sequence of operations, right? One thing feeds the other to get the outcome that they want. So they take a complex issue with multiple facets to it, like this thing that we're talking about. There was the warrant officer process. There was the accusation that came that was something completely different. There was the accusation. And what they do is they pick one, okay, and they generalize that as guilty and they apply it to everything else.
Yes.
Right? That's how they do it. And then what they do with the public is they give you what's called a black and white or a binary choice, which is in our mind. We want to know, is he guilty or is he innocent?
Yes.
Did he do it or did he not? And so now we have an expert, an investigative reporter, right, that says it must be true. Okay, because he's showing us a document. And then they generalize that and said he's guilty of one, which he admitted to, therefore he's guilty of everything.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really what they've tried to do with this, isn't
100%.
it?
Well, 100%.
Yeah.
And then now we're going to most likely have a affidavit or letter of fact from someone who was part of the investigation.
Yeah.
Who was there. The same person. Well, there's a lot more coming out, as need be, until people realize what this really is.
Yeah.
Right before the primary, we won the convention nomination, 72%, which is the Republican Party base.
Right.
You cannot win a primary election if you do not have the support of the Republican Party base. And this is across the entire state. King County, Pierce County, Snohomish County.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you have all of this money and all that supposed name brand recognition, but your candidate cannot win? Well, then you attack.
Yeah.
So much for Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment. Thou shalt
And
not
for the
speak
record,
ill
he's
of
asking
other
my questions
Republicans.
for me now because
Yeah.
I anticipated all these.
Oh,
so
no,
keep
please go
going.
ahead.
No, you're doing great.
But back to you. But
Yeah.
it is. Not knowing what you're going to ask, but still, it's a common sense element that we're talking about.
Yeah.
These things don't happen by accident. This is not any investigative reporting. This is a slander and libel operation.
Absolutely.
To distort the truth, to eliminate me, thinking that if you ruin my life, if you destroy my family, that I will quit.
Yeah.
And they don't know me because I won't. It's exactly because you are attacking me and my family. I have a daughter in the National Guard,
Yeah.
my middle daughter.
Yeah.
I have a daughter, my oldest daughter, with 2 grandchildren who are in high school. My youngest is 17 in high school.
Yeah.
Children are sometimes unforgiving, but these individuals do not care about my family or me. It's politics.
You know who else they don't care about are all the people that gave their life for this country.
Our veterans, if you can do this to me,
Yes.
if you can do this to me,
Yeah.
someone who was, again, Bronze Star of Valor, Purple Heart, from combat operations,
Yeah.
and once you prove that you legitimately and truthfully earned those with your blood, sweat, tears, and willingness to give all for your nation, you prove that to be honorable and true. They ignore that. Now it's about, as you said, the reprimand. Let's shift to the reprimand now, because they tried to use this to say, well, if he's guilty of this, he's guilty of all. But we proved we're not guilty of this or any other medal or badge. Now we're about the reprimand, and you have to show me as being dishonest, nefarious, a fraud. That's the intent. Discredit me before the primary.
Yeah, and let me give for the people that watch this a kind of a contrast on these medals, especially during that time, right? So I was stationed on a ship as I was sent out there to learn how to be the officer of the deck, to drive the ship because I was in the pipeline to someday possibly command one if I stayed in that long. And so the ship is close to Iraqi shore, and the shooting basically just started, okay? And so we get the orders, and this was a flat-bottom boat, an amphibious assault ship, basically. And they're like, get as close to that shore as you want. I think if I recall from those days, we could go into I want to say 4 fathoms of water or something, which is like 16 feet of water or something anyway, something like that. It was shallow, and they could see us. And so we maneuvered the ship around, maneuvered it back out, to safety to deeper water. And then the Commodore puts the CO of the ship in for a Bronze Star for that valiant act of the ship never getting fired at.
Yep.
We were in no danger. We were laughing about it, and she gets the Bronze Star.
Yes.
Because they wanted her to be an admiral someday.
Yes.
That's not what happened with you.
No, and this is important to know. My award was a Bronze Star with V device for Valor. Combat action. Not in a vehicle,
Right.
not in a barracks, not in a combat zone, but on the objective, returning fire,
Yeah.
numerous magazines of fire, receiving fire. This is the nexus of the offense
Yeah.
and why this is so wrong. The other point I'd like to make, combat infantry badge. They dare to mention that. I have all the evidence of the actual firefight, what we call a high incident report,
Right.
showing that we called in an AC-130 gunship.
That's probably my son.
And please, for anyone who
Spectre.
hears this,
Yes.
look up and just Google Spectre gunship
Watch the YouTube
AC-130
video on that and see
and
what they
watch
do.
the video
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
that happening, and that is in that incident report.
Yeah.
That was not my first. I have numerous accounts and documents to show that I have earned a combat infantry badge, not because I was in country in a
Yeah.
combat zone, but that I qualified by being there doing that in firefights.
Right.
That is, again, the nexus of the offense
Yes.
of trying to take away a person's sacrifice and service to their nation. Who does this?
You could probably, like right now, you could tell me how many friends that you served with that unfortunately you had to attend their funerals,
I could say,
right? I remember all of mine. In fact, I remember pulling some of them out of the water. So they aren't really, I mean, the way I look at this, yeah, it's disgusting towards you. It's even more disgusting towards all of them,
yeah, well,
right?
I
And I know
can
you
only-
feel the same way.
Oh, I do.
Right.
I lost my best friend
Yeah.
in my rotation.
They don't know what they do. Or
they
do
don't.
they?
No, they
Right?
don't.
So if we get into this, so, and again, for people, I keep looking down here because I don't want to be misquoted and have like rants write something, and then the next thing you know, I'm having like lawyers contacting me or something, right?
So I just refer to that because I don't want to talk about.
No, I get it,
the
and most
death
people
of-
don't.
yeah.
So the first thing when I started hearing this, and then looking at the on Twitter, I'm sorry, X, looking at that stuff and things that were coming out, and I'm looking at the timeline, and you talked about it just got released the day after Memorial Day, but then I thought back and. What's her name? Was it Lisa Evans? Her name, who's the lady that's in the candidates committee, that she wouldn't give up the information they had at the convention back on, that was on the 18th or on the 19th of April, which was the Friday. And we were like, tell us what you got. And they wouldn't do it.
I
Okay?
requested a list of who was on the candidate committee.
Yeah.
My campaign did directly to Lisa Evans.
Right.
And she would not respond or give that information.
Yeah.
But when it was brought up during an executive board meeting,
Yeah.
Chairman Walsh immediately said, well, of course we'll give you that information, and immediately asked one of his assistants
Yeah.
to just give that information out. But she would not give that information to anyone.
Right.
Again, but
What
please
are
proceed.
the chances, if we let's apply the principle to Occam's razor to all these questions, what are the chances that they had that information back in April?
Well, I don't speculate. I'm an intelligence person, so
All right.
there's a value to speculation when
Okay.
you have numerous.
Is it possible?
Of course.
Is it probable?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I would say this.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that communications between another campaign and the candidate committee happened,
Okay.
for a fact.
Excellent. Is it any coincidence that it came out the day after Memorial Day? I mean, did Rance just get it on Friday and say, well, I got a 3-day weekend, I'm putting it out on Tuesday?
Again, speculation is something that
I'll let the audience make that decision. What's the most likely outcome? What is the possibility that maybe there could be a coordinated effort with your opposition in all of this? So basically what I think of it is, hey, are these people the de facto press secretaries for your opponent's campaign?
Well, let's get facts.
Yeah.
So there are factual information that is out there, screenshots of operatives of the other individual who's running as a Republican in this race. That operative has flat out said that she provided the documents to Jason Rance. Whether that's true or not, she's a known operative of that campaign.
Okay.
And
so
said
it's
it
likely it was
publicly.
sourced from the campaign,
Yeah.
or it's possible.
Well, there it is. Well, she's saying it
and
is. so.
Occam says that it probably did happen.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple more on this line, right? So my experience with winners, right, or people that know that they have an advantage and they're going to win, is they exploit that advantage, right? They don't look for ways to do like dirty tricks or underhanded things to try to gain an advantage. Do you think that's maybe what might be going on here? I mean, do you think you're winning this race?
Well, 100%. It's again, polls. People talk about polls. That goes to the brainwashing of our citizens, and all of us fall into it. So no one knows to look at the sample group.
Yes.
Because one of the last polls everybody talks about, even the media said, and I had an interview, and they were talking about, well, you're, 5% in this, and Reichert and Bob Ferguson are in the 30s. And I said, what is the sample size of your poll? Well, I don't have that information. I said 403. Well, that's correct.
Yeah.
And 403 for 39 counties and a population of.
It's not even representative.
It's not representative.
It's definitely not scientific.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. And so you can. It's poll manipulation. Those polls are paid for.
That's right.
My point being is, you asked the question, are we winning? Well, all evidence would point yes.
Okay.
Our sample size was at the convention, 1,839
That's right.
delegates.
Which
72
is representative.
Which is representative of the
Right.
voting body of the Republican Party. Again, I previously stated, you cannot win a primary election without the Republican base.
That's right. And we're talking about the primary here.
Primary election.
Yeah.
It's a statistical fact. It's a historic fact, and I deal with facts, statistics. And so 72%, that's pretty fact-based.
Yeah.
And coming out of that, the other individual said, well, I was promised by leaders in the Republican Party that Semi Bird would be disqualified. Mm-hmm. The other individual said that they changed the rules
Yes.
to
I'm out.
value or disvalue him,
Yeah.
when in fact they changed the rules to disqualify me. Then the other individual said that, well, I'm going to take my ball and go home. Essentially,
Right.
I am no longer seeking the endorsement of the Washington State Republican Party, but yet the good news was they kept his name on the ballot, as it should have been,
Right.
because he had delegates at that convention, and
right.
they deserved to have their candidate's name
That's right.
on that ballot. It's called election integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at what's happening to me right now, in terms of am I winning, and why this is happening in Occam's razor theory, election integrity, distorted perception theory, timing is not a coincidence.
No.
This is election interference, plain and simple. And it's not simply coming from another campaign or via the media. We were talking about the dissemination of an illegally obtained document.
Right.
We're talking about press releases being done that
Now
are
we're talking about
focusing.
conspiracy to commit a crime.
Well, that's exactly what
Right.
it is, but that's why I said hopefully that Office of Inspector General.
Yes.
And they're not going to look at, because all of this is coming from the Republican Party. It's not coming from the Democrat Party.
Well, why would they? We're doing it for them.
Exactly. And so I have no bitterness.
Yeah. Because you're not a bitter man.
I will say this. I'm focused on the mission.
Good.
And the mission is to represent our citizens who have had their voices suppressed, who have had their elections compromised, who want someone who has lived life, who understands what it's like to fall down and to navigate adversity and to get up.
Can you be a leader if you haven't experienced any of that?
Well, arguably you could say that you're missing out on an opportunity to be compassionate and empathize with someone who knows what it's like to live below the poverty line, who knows what it's like to come from a broken family, who knows what it's like to make a mistake in life. Life is life. And having representation of the people, by the people, and truly for the people means that that person is among the people and campaigning among the people and being present. And I do this every single day, 7 days a week.
Are you well received in, let's say, the marginalized communities?
Well, I was just there a couple days ago and endorsed by Seattle Music, this beautiful organization, and it's a black-owned organization. I've sat with the largest black media producer in the state, and people say, well, you mentioned black, so now somebody's playing the race card. Or I've mentioned the fact that this is the equivalent of a public lynching. And I got that from what Clarence Thomas went through.
Yeah.
When he was being vilified and attacked, and he knew the truth. He knew it was not true, but yet all of the media and all of the power and all the establishment were levied against.
Yeah.
Right? Brett Kavanaugh went to this.
Yes.
But as soon as I say this,
Yeah.
I'm playing the race card because I evoke my childhood memory of what I come from. That I cannot talk about that because I'm a man of color. I cannot talk about how I feel.
Yeah.
And that I know what it's like, separate but equal. Like being on the slate of endorsed candidates with the Washington State Republican Party. But I'm watching that the Washington State Republican Party is not out supporting me. They're not out advocating for me. They're not out fundraising for me. We saw what they are doing to me by bringing the same candidate committee that tried to disqualify me.
Right.
By writing that press release and releasing that illegal document to defame, to slander, and to vilify me.
Yeah.
Is that equal?
Well, and not only that, so Chairman Walsh in his letter writes about they don't have a procedure in their bylaws or a process to actually disqualify you, yet the E-Board did meet, and the grassroots, everybody in the grassroots knew about it.
Yeah.
So why would they leak that information out again to set the narrative?
You know, the E-Board met, and there's rules to meetings.
Yes.
And this was a special meeting. Their terms, their words, and it was to look at replacing candidates to the RNC convention
Okay.
who could not attend. But quickly it went to a motion to investigate me, their endorsed candidate.
Was that proper?
Was it proper?
It was within the rules.
Not according to any rules that I am aware of, and I
Okay.
taught Robert's Rules of
Okay.
Order. But yet during that meeting, it was brought up, we can't talk about anything that happened in that meeting, which immediately after I couldn't tell my campaign, I could not tell my attorney, but they
so
were
you were
moving.
there.
I'm on the Washington State Republican Party
Got
Executive
it.
Board.
Got it.
So I was there, and I actually came late to the meeting, and I heard everything at that point moving forward. And I heard the person say, this is an executive session. We cannot talk about this. And then the chairman validate that statement. And then all of a sudden, after it was called out, they start backpedaling and saying, well, no, we didn't say that. My point being is, we're winning this election. We have support in the inner city because I've been campaigning in the inner city, representing all communities, all groups. Again, e pluribus unum, all cultures, all races, all religions. In the Central District of Seattle, my lead is a former Democrat PCO who was the founder of Democrats for Diversity and Inclusion. His partner is an imam of a local mosque who had to send.
Is he a man of faith?
He is a man of faith.
Okay, right.
Right, a different name, Allah,
That's right.
and he sent his 2 children back to Somalia, a war-torn country, because of his concerns of what's happening in our schools. This is what we are fighting for.
Yeah, and we both know what Somalia is like.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, so-
we are fighting for representation to protect our children, to protect our citizens' constitutional rights. We're not fighting against anyone, but they are choosing
Yes.
to wage this war against my campaign and me personally,
Right.
and my family. There's no bar to which they will go below. That should be a concern for all citizens.
Right. Because it won't change if they get in office.
Of course not.
They're not there for the people.
Well, that's my perception.
I agree. Right. So yeah, just a couple more things. Right. So if they were winning on the other side, don't you think that the news media and everybody else would be running polls and like rubbing it in your face and our face every single day?
Well, absolutely.
Right. That's another indicator, right? That's a KPI, we call them, right?
Key performance indicator, absolutely.
They're not. They're not running polls. They're not running polls and publishing the crosstabs, which are basically the cross section of people, and for people that don't know what I'm saying, just real briefly, is you go into let's say a population of people, and X number of people are likely Democrats because we don't register by party here, which is a huge mistake. It's detrimental to this process. So many are Republicans, and then the independents, and then they poll based on those percentages. That's why in other states, it's so important for them to register voters by party. That's why.
But even the polls are corrupt because again,
I totally get it. But when they see that, that's what it means to be like scientific. It has to be random and it has to be representative.
True.
Right? Okay, so that's what I mean.
Yeah, research
if that were the
methodology.
case here, they would be cherry picking the most favorable. Even if they had to cherry pick the most favorable counties or areas, legislative districts, whatever, they would be running those things every day because he has $3.5 million.
Well, they already have, and they're doing it, but they're not doing what you're saying, which is true research. But I think at the end of the day, the bottom line is, when you're not winning, you play dirty.
Yes.
When you're not winning, you attack the messenger, not the message. Because if you were attacking the messenger, you would debate. If you would bring your policies forward, you would bring your solutions forward, and you would be on the stage. And you would do a debate so that the citizens can clearly see that you are the candidate with the right solutions, with the right policies to bring transformative change to support and to preserve the constitutional rights of our citizens, to bring value to our citizens, make our streets safer, make our schools better, lower taxes, make it affordable for seniors to be able to live on a fixed income. Do something about the homelessness crisis, the human trafficking crisis, the drug threat of fentanyl, the deaths of thousands. You would debate and be clear with those who you hope to serve, but not this candidate. We've tried, and this is not me vilifying, because that is the difference between us. Even at the convention, the media says, Dave Reichert called you a crook, a con man, a snake oil salesman, and a thief. How do you respond to that? And I said, I've always responded and referred to him as a gentleman. I think I will stay on that line. And then I proceeded to talk about policy. And I will continue to do that because I will not call names. I was raised differently because I am winning. And so I am focusing on policies and solutions because that's what you do. When you're winning, you stay with a winning strategy, which is to go to the people, not to attack other candidates. That should never be a winning strategy.
So is this whole thing getting you off message?
Not at all.
Absolutely. Right.
Not at all. It takes time. We have to work a little harder.
Exactly.
But again, I look at it this way. When you expose nefarious intention, it tells people what we're fighting for. It shows people how serious things are in our society, that we've lost our sense of civility and human decency. And that's what we should be fighting for. Human decency, civility.
Yes.
What brings our society and our people together.
Right.
Leaders don't divide, leaders unite.
Exactly.
This is what we should be looking for. And so what we're doing is not fighting against anyone, but fighting for everyone.
Absolutely. Okay, we're just about done. A couple more. How's your morale?
I will say this in truth. My family has suffered because of this attack, which when my family suffers, it hurts me.
Yeah.
But it has only strengthened my resolve.
Beautiful.
As I was saying just moments ago, this is a calling to me, as I said at the outset of this interview. What greater calling than to do right, than to take that difficult right over the easy wrong? I learned that in that counseling.
Yeah.
To not give up, to stand strong in the presence of senior representation or
adversity in general.
Adversity, no matter how much money the other ones have, no matter how much power, all the media support, no matter what. No, you stand strong and you remember what you're fighting for and those who you are fighting for. You love your family and you want to protect your family, but you cannot run from this. That's why you're running for this. no, this has only strengthened my resolve to push
How's your
forward.
team doing? How about theirs?
I have an amazing team.
Yeah.
The support that I have, the beautiful people. My regret is that I can never truly value them as much as I really want to, because they have shouldered the burden of helping me through this, coaching me through this. They are beautiful human beings, and so much that our support of the thousands out there who so many messages come in every day. Every time I'm out there every day. I was at a rodeo in Newport yesterday. I'll be in Colville this afternoon at a music festival, honoring our veterans, supporting our veterans. All these people come to me and say, I'm so sorry what you're going through. You're in my prayers. We see this for what it is. And they feel this. My campaign team feels our mission.
Yeah.
You can't buy that.
No.
You cannot pay enough money for that. And that's what I want people to understand. My campaign team, they, like me, we're not bought and paid for. We are doing this because of our love for our state, for our nation, and for our communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we're here.
And that's what scares them.
Yeah.
Right. And on that line, you kind of talked about it. Your supporters. Those ones that you meet for the first time, and ones that you've known all along. I don't think their resolve's good too, as well, right? In fact, I think we're more resolved than ever.
100%.
Okay.
No, 100%. And my faith is strong. Very strong.
Yeah.
And that has been my protection.
Right.
That is the greatest protection I could ever have.
On that note, who's in charge of your destiny?
Oh, it is my Lord God.
Roger that. Thank you,
Without
sir.
doubt. God bless you.
God bless you,
Thank you,
man.
brother.
All
Thank
right.
you.